So welcome everyone back to the very first Scriptology session of 2025. That sounds crazy. It's one of those years that sounds like the beginning of a science fiction book, but the future is now, and real estate success is built on the same lodestones as it always has been. They were joined by Val Gonzalez, one of the top real estate professionals, not just here in Keller Williams in-town, but in all of Atlanta. As the CEO and team lead of Vesta Consulting Group, she has left scores of satisfied customers in her wake. One of the coolest things about her internet presence is the use of video for her client reviews and testimonials. And it's this forward thinking that she brings not just to the Associate Leadership Council, but to us today. There are top producers everywhere in every industry, but not many have the time nor inclination to share their secret sauce with others in the business. Val is the exception, and she's truly exceptional. And we're excited to have her here with us today. Val, welcome. Oh, we lost her. Welcome to Self Scriptology for January 2025. And once she's back, we will continue and get started from there.
I don't know
what you are.
You were like in the middle of that beautiful introduction. I don't know what happened.
Well, full disclosure, I was reading it on another screen, so I popped back over. I was like, and Val's gone. Okay, so right on. Thanks again for joining.
I hope it's true.
Thank you for joining us today. Happy New Year to you. How's everything going?
Great. Happy New Year to all of you. Am I going to get to see other people, or do I just get to see
You're just going to see everyone's in the background listening and hanging out, but we're going to be saving this, like I said, out to share with some of the people who couldn't make it today as well. But yeah, just wanted to kind of pick your brain for a little bit on some of the power of scripting and how it's worked for you. You've got tremendous amount of success in this industry over the past 20 years. You did not achieve your success by mistake or happenstance. Can you share the impact of proper scripting and preparation that has had on your business?
Yeah. So, no, you're right. And again, thank you for the lovely introduction. I'm just going to put my computer on Do Not Disturb. Otherwise, we're going to hear a ping about every 2 minutes.
That's the sign of someone who's a very busy person.
I was promised a brand new computer for Christmas. I know it hasn't been ordered yet. So if anyone sees my wife, tell her I'm still waiting for my Christmas present. There we go. Because this one is slow as molasses. And yeah, so it's interesting. I am a firm believer, and if you've ever taken a class with me, you've probably heard me say this a couple of times. I believe that everything we do in this business has to do with how we say it and what we say. It was about 7 or 8 years ago that I stopped calling it scripting, because way back when, it's always been known as script and dialogues. And when I led the Graham CB group, and I was their director of sales, and one of my roles was to hire and train the agents, they used to all kind of complain about having to do scripts and dialogues. So I just changed it to let's practice conversations. And in the wake of the lawsuit that we experienced in this industry in the past couple of years, the company itself, KW, has shifted the name to conversations, right? Into conversation practice. So I think that sometimes scripting can have a bad connotation, and a lot of people are scared of it, and not scared so much, but hesitant to actually practice. And so we'll just call it conversation practice. And it's true. And I have become very intentional in the past 9-10 years about my conversations and my conversation practice. So much so that even today, when I have a difficult conversation that I have to have, whether it be with a client, a co-oping agent, or a personal difficult conversation, because we have those all the time, I practice it. I run through what I want to say. I write down my bullet points. Sometimes we all get nervous about something every once in a while, right? We're all human, and I am not opposed to having bullet points when I'm going into a conversation. I want to make sure that I hit those marks and that I have make my point across. So yes, to your point, I'd like to practice what I say and how I say it.
It's one of those things that I think is lost, not just in real estate sales, but in sales in general. It's not just getting the information across. It is literally how the information is packaged, delivered, and it's got to be personalized, and it's got to be reflective of your relationship and your experiences. And I think that that's something that's super important. My dad used to tell me this when I was a kid. It was the 7 Ps. Proper prior preparation prevents piss poor performance. And
Ooh,
it was
hold on, I gotta write that down. I gotta write that down. That's another thing I do a lot, is write things down. So
he was an old salesman, and he applied it to everything that we did in life, and made sure that, if you measure twice and cut once, it's the same mentality. And I love that you were able to kind of hone in on that. Was there a moment for you, or a flashpoint moment, or kind of a road to Damascus type of situation where you kind of said, hey, I need to get really serious about framing out these conversations and being super prepared?
Yeah, so I had the pleasure of taking a training course about 23 years ago. It was 2000. The year was 2000. That's how I know. So 25 years ago now. And there was a very famed real estate coach and instructor named Howard Britton. And he used to lead something called Star Power University. And he had a buyer agent university, and he had a listing agent university. And at the time, I was a buyer specialist on the ZAC team. And I went to Minnesota to train with Howard Britton for 3 days. And we got, and I still have it somewhere, it's probably right next to me. We got a script. Back then they were called scripts. Right. Note card binder that was about 2 inches thick, color coordinated depending on the topic that you were covering. So if it was listings and you needed a price reduction, that was one color, buyers another color, etc. And there were about 300 of us in a hotel conference room doing this university. And one of our assignments on the first day was we had to go to our hotel that night, practice a particular dialogue, and then come and deliver it in front of the entire room. Ooh. And this was led, nice. And if anyone knows, KW lore and MAPS lore, it was led by Diana Kokoska, who was pretty much one of the founders of MAPS coaching. Right. And at the time, she ran an uber successful real estate team out of Denver. Her son, Sean Kokoska, was the top buyer specialist in the country. And so these are the people that you're doing this in front of. Right. And it got me out of my comfort zone of practicing words ahead of time. And so that was my first experience with it. Cut to about 1.5 years later, maybe 2 years later, I'm still on the ZAC team. And I remember having a situation with a client where all of a sudden I'm having this conversation with the client, and I'm helping them get through their buyer fear and premature buyer's remorse. And all of a sudden these words just came out of my mouth, and I kind of sat back going, well, who is that? Where did those words come from? And it was because I had practiced.
Yeah.
Came out, and I found myself extremely prepared in a very, what one could perceive as a challenging situation. I'd only been in the business a couple of years at the time. I was very, very inexperienced still. And I realized that I had the power all the time. Like I had the power in me, and I had the tools that I needed. And so that became the impetus for me wanting to practice it more and really lean into words and lean into how you say them.
So 25 years later, do you
Yeah.
still engage in conversation practice in your daily, in your, I guess, your business plan? Is that have that already built in?
It is built in. In fact, last year I had the extreme pleasure of practicing in person in New York City with Phil Jones. So I'm a big Phil Jones fan. I read his book for the first time 5 years ago by kind of a little bit of being at the right place and at the right time and knowing the right people and asking the question. I was able to go to a very small, intimate 2-day workshop with him last year in New York. And I practiced exactly what to say in real estate with him and about 10 other MAPS coaches.
That's fantastic. That book is the one that Mark gave me right before Christmas, and I read it over Christmas, and it's fantastic, and it applies to so many different things. And like you said, you prepare even for those personal conversations that are going to be tough using that same framework. And I think that that's so. I think people see conversation practicing or scripting as a restriction. And for me, it gives you the freedom to truly be able to work because you've got these parameters built out for yourself. It lets you truly fully engage in a way that you're confident with, but also have the flexibility to be on your toes as well.
Well, that's exactly right. And when I would lead script practices on my previous teams, the idea behind it was that you could overcome any question, any objection without being prepared for it, right? So that idea of being able to think on your toes, as you just mentioned, that's what it's all about. Right. There are times when, I'll get a question and I will be stumped, and yet I know exactly how to answer that. I don't know and I'll be honest with the client, I don't know the answer to that, and yet I know exactly where to find it. Give me a few minutes and let me go find it, right? So it's not about having the answers to everything. This isn't a magic pill that you take and all of a sudden, this is a continuous practice. And and as you were asking, it is something I make time for. It's actually on my GPS, which is my goal setting plan for the year. It's part of a weekly practice. I want to say it's daily. I don't always have the time to practice it daily, and yet I have tools on my phone, on my computer, on my iPad that I can go to really quickly if I'm stumped over something. And I usually keep that book. I have a copy at the office and a copy at home.
That's fantastic. I think that you've done a really good job of showing kind of why we do this. Do you mind if we go into kind of some specific examples? Because I've been trying to get better at my conversational preparation. Mark can attest to this. I've been going over we have these mortgage coaches that we deliver to our clients, and I had one over the weekend. It was fantastic. I was ready for everything. I want to ask you, what about the importance of when you have a new client, making sure that they've got a team that they can rely on for the transaction? Because more and more you're seeing people say, oh, I've come with my own lender or my own realtor. How do you broach that conversation when they say, oh, no, it's cool, my best friend's brother's a lender, he can get it done? Or worse yet, they come to you and say, I love my Rocket lender, let's get this working. How do you impress upon them knowing that circle of professionals, and also the importance of using, just for an example, a local lender who's an expert in the region specifically? That's
kind of my favorite. The Rocket Mortgage is probably one of my favorite examples because it's true. And in fact, it happens all the time. And it happened to me. I have new clients that I just met right before Christmas, and they're closing this week. And he came with his Rocket Mortgage letter, and he was really cute about it. He said, I have some credits with them still. And I thought, okay. And he said, they did a great job, et cetera, et cetera. And I said, well, I love that you have that. And thank you for being so prepared. However, in the market that we're in Atlanta, my experience is that an internet lender or a Rocket Mortgage or someone who is not living and breathing and working in the Atlanta market every day has a really challenging time meeting some of the deadlines that are required in this market. So would you be open to having a conversation with one of our local lenders just in case?
Do you mind if we kind of break that down really quickly for people who are listening? Because I want to show the art of what you just delivered. The first part of what you said was you validated their experience and their research. I'm so glad you came with this. I'm so glad you're so prepared. You've taken any sort of oppositional walls down because you didn't say, that's silly. Rocket's the worst. Like you validated their experience. You made them feel part of the transaction. And then from there, you said, in my experience, which then goes back to everything that the reason they chose you as a lender, as a realtor, in the first place, is because of the things, the value proposition. I'm going to use the proper language that you'd already presented and reinforced throughout the process. So you say, in my experience, you present the reasons, the hurdles that can come from that without ever once denigrating Rocket Mortgage, without ever once propping up someone else. You just said, hey, my experience has shown me that to navigate this market, the specificity with which you spoke allows you to reclaim your position as the expert. And then you said, would you be willing to? And from there, you've presented them with a question where there isn't a logical no. There isn't a logical reason for them to say no to it.
And I'm very specific about the words I use. It's would you be open to? Because, and that's a Phil Jones line. That's a Phil Jones line. And the reason behind it is that everyone wants to be perceived as open-minded, right? And so when you use that specific word, would you be open to, their knee-jerk reaction is going to be, of course I'm open to it.
Right.
They're not saying yes or no, but they're going to say I'm open to it, right? And then, you know, I will oftentimes go into an example of why, right? So in that particular, and these are the exact words I use with any client, right? And it would probably change ever so slightly if it was someone who was local and I didn't know them, and I would probably be a little more open to them using that lender. I'd have to dig a little deeper. I'd have to ask more questions. I'd want to call with the lender before I would fully agree to it. However, with the Rocket Mortgage, which is usually it's usually the one that most people have.
Right.
I'll go into specifics about timing, and I'll say something like, you know, in 3 out of the last 5 transactions where we represented the buyer, we had to do financing and appraisal contingencies under a due diligence period of 5 days. That's typically very challenging for an out-of-state lender to be able to handle. And what'll end up happening is that they'll say, oh, absolutely. They told me that they needed about 14 days.
Right. And I think that's, yeah.
So knowing that and having the wherewithal to say, no, this is how it is in this market, and this is how it is in order to win. And especially, you know, and right now we're not necessarily in the competitive situation or competitive market that we were 2 years ago, 3 years ago. And yet we still have competitive situations. I was in a ton of multiple offer situations last year, and even in the fall, as late as November, we were in multiple offers.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
I love the way you explain that, because it one, you keep them center. You keep them as the principal thing. You keep the borrower, the client, as this is why we're doing this, and you reinforce upon them that, hey, we're all on one team. If we don't get you to the closing table, everyone's upset. So let's make sure that we're utilizing everything that's around us. I had a situation, like I said, did that pre-call this weekend, and there's an agent I've never worked with before. And so I had that. I was the other side of that first kind of, hey, how fast can you? Great. I was ready for them, but it's. I think that one of the things that the conversation practice grants you is that confidence in those situations. It's like, oh, I wasn't expecting this, but hey, I'm ready for it. I'm prepared. And something you mentioned earlier, the ability to say, I don't know, but I know how to find it. This is a society these days where people will fake expertise to save face. And I think that's something so powerful in being exactly. There's something so powerful to be able to say, hey, I have the resources to get you that answer. Give me 10 minutes. And I think that also engenders and deepens that relationship as well.
Yeah. Well, hey, Val, I was going to say, I feel like once you've established that, relationship with them and you've had those conversations, then you just carry more weight, right? They just they're like, oh, okay, well, let me hear her out. Yeah, she has a good point there. And the more that they understand that you are the expert, and really all you're trying to do is save them some headache, right? All you're trying to do is help them be successful.
Save them the headache, save me the headache. It's sometimes a little bit selfish. I will say one of the things that I did in that example, and that I do this often, and the way I'm going to describe it, it doesn't sound very nice, but it is important. I do put them in harm's way ever so slightly, right? So I put the client in harm's way. And what I mean by that is I explain to them oh my gosh, I just forgot the word.
Consequences?
The consequence of not using the local lender. Exactly. And so by putting them in quotes in harm's way and saying, this is what happens if we don't use that local lender, it helps to illustrate the point. It just drives it home a little bit more clearly for them. And then it allows them to go, well, I don't want to be in that situation. I don't want to have my, financing jeopardized, or I don't want to have the ability to get this home jeopardized. Mm-hmm. So she's the expert. She must know what she's talking about. Let me go ahead and do that. And I think that you rely on the statistics, you rely on the market. And if you're a new agent and you don't have the experience of having been in multiple transactions or multiple offer situations, you can still use the words, my observation of the market has been. That's not saying you have the experience, and yet it is the observation of the market, which is just as viable as having the experience, right? Mm-hmm. Because as the professional in the relationship, it's your job and it's your duty to interpret the market for that client. That's one of the reasons why they hire us. That's one of our value propositions. And so even if you yourself haven't had the experience firsthand, you've had the observation of the market.
That's fantastic. I love it. Before I let you go, thank you again for all your time you've given us. This has been fantastic. This has been a great conversation. Before I let you go, I was doing kind of my touch bases yesterday, and a common refrain from people who were saying, hey, would you reach out to this lead for me, was, well, they told me they weren't going to shop until the new year. So see if you can get them off the fence. Do you have a script for this time of year where we're trying to get people off that fence and into the game of real estate?
Yeah, so I love this time of year. And in fact, I start using this conversation at the end of the fall. And it's about getting them out of harm's way. Now is the actual time to start shopping for homes in the spring market. January and February are the perfect time, right? And so in October, I was saying, let's get ahead of the spring market. October, November, and December are personally, as a realtor, my favorite time to shop for a home for a client, because I believe they're going to get the best deal. If there's a deal to be had, it's going to be in October, November, and December. And then they get to qualify for homestead exemption this year. How you can frame it now and how you can frame that conversation is, let's get ahead of the spring market. You want to get ahead of the spring market so you don't find yourself competing with 2, 3, 4. We don't know what that spring market's going to be. We are expecting it to be quite robust.
Right.
We could see, pretty heavy multiple offer situations come spring. We're still running, our days on, or our inventory has come up to almost a full neutral market. And yet we still have homes we can't find for clients. So it's about getting ahead of everyone else who wants to shop in the spring. And traditionally, our spring market has always started around the Super Bowl. And yet in the past 4 years, it's been starting, or after the Super Bowl ends, which this year it's the second weekend in February. Right. And in the last 4 years, I've seen it start as early as the first week of January.
It is. And I think one of the real big benefits of having these conversations is you get to educate the buyer and kind of, like you said, deepen those roots with them, because you hear spring market and they say, oh, why would it be busy in the spring? And you explain to them that this is when people are moving so they can be in new school districts. You don't want to be moving a child in the middle of a school year. And having even those depth of conversations, that light bulb moment goes off for them, and it becomes kind of, oh, why this is so important, why right now, why this is urgent. You're creating that sense of urgency within them. And also, like you said, the opportunity cost of waiting.
Yeah. Well, and that's exactly right. And, one of the things I've always loved about being working with buyers is that I could control my paycheck. I started real estate in a very neutral market, very, very neutral, with 8% interest rates. And, it's, I learned very quickly that a buyer didn't cost money. So to work with a buyer, there was no money involved. If I needed, a paycheck here and a paycheck there, and I needed, to reverse engineer when I was getting paid. And so that's one of my favorite things. And then it became just a love for the relationship, because it is a very different relationship. But, that sense of urgency of being able to help them understand why now is better than later. And I think we've all seen this. And again, if you're new to the market, if you're new to real estate, ask questions and find out what people have seen and have observed in the past 4 or 5 years. But those people who, when the rates first went up, what was it, 2022, the end of 22, that they first went up, those people who took themselves out of the market and said they were going to wait a year, the prices didn't wait for them. We've still seen double-digit appreciation every year in certain neighborhoods. The national average is 4%, and yet I sat in a room with Gary Keller in November, and he gave us a graph where we are trending as a nation above the 4% trend line, a lot closer to 10%. So, what is the cost of waiting? And I think one of the things that y'all do so well, and to everyone who's listening, lean on your lenders for this. In fact, Van and I were just talking about this about a month ago, which is help your clients understand what that cost of waiting really means. If they don't purchase today, what is purchasing a year from now, 6 months from now, going to look like? They're going to lose buying power with every day that they wait. They're losing buying power. And for some people, that's a lot. That's, they can't afford to lose that buying power. It's no different than those of those clients who want to wait till the rates go down. We don't have a crystal ball that's going to guarantee us that the rates are going to go down at all. The risk in waiting is that today, what's the rate today?
7.
Okay. So today they have the ability to lock in their cost of living for the next 30 years. If they take a 30-year loan, right?
Right.
if they're going to wait, they could be locking in their cost of living next year at 7.5% or 8%. We don't have a crystal ball. There is too much risk in waiting, regardless of the interest rate. Regardless of the interest rate, at the end of the day, you have to live somewhere, and it's not like our rental prices are going down, right?
No.
Right, exactly. So the risk is too great to wait, and that's something that when someone asks you, when is a good time to purchase, the answer literally is, it's always a good time to purchase. In fact, it was better yesterday.
I think that's fantastic, and that's wonderful. And I'm gonna stop stealing your time off of this. Van, do you have anything for Val? She's given us so much.
Yeah, she's just so great. So Val, just some words of gratitude.
Sweet.
Thank you. It's so nice to just see you effortlessly talk about things that are so true. And, I would encourage everyone to take your advice and practice, because when you practice, then it just, like you just said all that stuff and it just came off and it was just so easy. Right. But it didn't get that way it wasn't that way on day one,
No, it wasn't. It wasn't. I listen a lot. I read a lot. I still, I write down things because it helps to secure it to memory. And, those are just things I would say: read, listen, come to classes. We've got a pretty fantastic lineup of classes that we're going to roll out this year, and some really great opportunities to sharpen our skills, because this will be, and I think last year proved it, this is a skills-based market. 100%. This is not just buyers falling out of the sky and put a sign up, put a lockbox, and you've got 10 offers on a property. We've been in a skill set market since the beginning of 2023, and it's just going to get tougher.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you again for taking time with us.
This was fun. I had no idea what to expect, and this was lovely. Thanks to y'all.
I like that. I like that review. That's a great endorsement. Everyone listening, guys, Val is a font of information, but she is not just talking about it. She walks the walk, serving on the ALC, serving as a mentor. Like, take advantage of the people in your office. The beauty of talk to your lenders, because I'll tell you right now, other offices aren't like this. Other offices outside of Keller Williams, they don't support each other. And even inside Keller Williams, there's something unique about the in-town office. So please take advantage of the experience in your office. Talk to the people. They aren't going to tell you to go pound sand. If they do, that's weird, because no one talks like that. But
no, you got to do the work. You got to do the work.
She does the work. And guess what? That's the secret sauce. Do the work. You'll get the results. Val, thank you again so much for your time. We'll be back again the first Tuesday of February with another guest.
Thank you.